2025 is going to look drastically different for those of us who love whites and neutrals. And in this video, I'm going to be telling you about the trending new whites and whites that are making a comeback that will be popular next year. So our first shade of white that is going to be a beauty to use is Creamy by Sherwin-Williams. Now this color is beautiful, it's soft, it's warm, it's everything that 2025 is going to be encapsulating. And I love this one because although it does have quite a yellow undertone, it's not too yellow to the point that you're like, did I just put pastel yellow on my walls? It's got that softness to it that you really want and have a warmth to it without it being so overpowered by that yellow tone. And I think this is a really great color, especially if you're wanting a warm space and you're wanting to pair it with a white. This is definitely a white you should be using. In saying that, if you do want to have a pretty heavy contrast with a blue, something like this type of white will create that really strong contrast, but it will bring out that yellowy tone. So imagine the beach having the sand and the waves. It'll create that level of contrast, which I think can be really beautiful in specific settings. If you did not know already, the 2025 colors of the years are very purpley, very moody, and very dark. And this is a trend that we're seeing with a lot of colors. However, with whites, we are seeing that they are moving even warmer and even darker as well. So a lot of the types of colors that you're going to be seeing here aren't going to be super bright whites. However, there will be something for those of you that want a bright white at the end, but there will be some darker tones that maybe you would almost consider more of a neutral rather than a off-white. Next we have White Dove by Benjamin Moore. Now this one is a creamy color as well, however it's got a bit more of a greeny sort of tone to it, so it won't feel as creamy and as warm as the one we just spoke about, but it will still have that warmer tone but with a little bit more of an earthier sort of element. And I love White Dove because it feels almost grayish because it's got that green tint to it. It's this off-white that feels gray but doesn't feel like a cold gray. Personally, I am not a huge fan of grays. I feel like they've been so heavily overused. But this white, it really plays along the edges of what you would consider a gray, a warm white. It's a really fun, warm color without it being super overpowering. And I really like the name of White Dove as well because typically when you use the word gray in a name, people like myself will be like, oh no, I don't want a gray. Instead, you are a little bit more open to this very subtle type of grayish white that isn't over dramatic in that sense. It feels new but warm, but still a little bit on a dirtier sort of side. So this is definitely a really nice white that you should definitely have in your arsenal. So those whites were from newer palettes. However, what if we wanted to bring back something that was older but is coming back into fashion? Well, I've got Hog Bristle Quarter for you from Dulux. Now, I remember when I first started working at paint stores, this was a color I used to recommend all the time because it has a really interesting balance. If you go all the way up to Hog Bristle, you'll definitely see this is a bit more of an orangey sort of undertone with a bit of a brownness to it. And the thing that I really liked about this color is that it had a really unique balance. If you're wanting something neutral that isn't very gray and a little bit more on those browner sort of tones, this is definitely the right color. I really like it because it does have that warmer accent to it, and because of the color trends that we are currently seeing, I can imagine this color being really popular again. I mean, it was popular 5-10 years ago, so I'm sure it's probably still popular now. But I do really like this color because it does have warmth to it, but it's not completely orange. In some spaces, it can have a very, very slight magenta tone to it, and it just adds a level of dimension to it that makes it feel very inviting. So if you're wanting something that's maybe a little bit more classical, a little bit more traditional, and has a little bit more oomph to it, this is definitely the color for you. But let's say you wanted a bit more of a balanced white. What type of white would you want then? Sherwin-Williams Sun Bleached is known as a chameleon greige because it can lean either warm or cool depending on what is in the space. So if you have a lot of warm items and warm colors, this will lean a little warmer. But If you have cooler lighting, more natural light, this can lean a little on the cooler side. So this is definitely a color that is very versatile and can be very transitional in a whole bunch of different spaces. It doesn't need to only go in a cool space or only a warm space. This can be a color that you can put throughout your entire house and look really nice. And something that I really do love about this is that because it's that greige sort of tone, it's not a true white. It's not just you've put straight white onto the walls. It has color to it, but it's so well balanced that it doesn't feel like this or that. And greiges, as much as I have a love-hate relationship with them, they aren't as bad as straight greys, and I do think that they are a lot more inviting and a lot more sophisticated, and this color definitely does that. All right, now this is going to be a super trendy color, and this is definitely a newer color as well, and I know some of you are going to be like, Tash, that is not white, and admittedly, yes, it probably isn't a white for most of you neutral girlies out there that do love a straight white, but tissue pink is a beautiful color. Now, Benjamin Moore designed this color to be perfect for like a powder room or maybe a little girl's room, but I actually think that this particular color has way more versatility. And based on our 2025 design trends, I actually think this is the perfect color if you're wanting to lean in on some of those trends and be a little bit more different and bolder with your color choices. Now, of course, this has a bit more of a pinky tone, but it is more of a nude and is very well balanced with bits of brown. So it's not like you're going straight pastel pink on the walls, but it definitely is not a white. So just be aware of that it is much more colored than the rest of the colors I've popped into this list. But it is really beautiful and is definitely a statement if you are wanting to add a little level of color in your neutral spaces. And finally, I did say that I was going to have a nice bright white for some of you white lovers out there that just want the straightest, whitest of whites. And this is a pretty bright white with an LRV value of over 90, meaning that it is going to reflect back at you at a high degree. And that is white snow. Now, white snow does have a very subtle little bit of yellow in it. But I do think that this is a necessity in a white paint because otherwise it can feel too stark on your eyes. And having that slight yellow tone to it is just going to slightly warm it up and slightly mute it down so then it doesn't hurt your eyes but still gives you that brightness that you want. Sherwin-Williams honestly did a pretty good number with this one. I actually think this is a great trim paint for those of us that don't like that straight white out of the can. So any of these colors on the list can probably go with this particular white as a trim. And I think it's a very versatile color, but personally I would leave it for more ceilings and trims if it were me. But if you are one of those people that really does love just a straight white with no color at all, this would be a perfect color for you. But yeah, those are my recommendations for 2025. If you have any other white paint recommendations, make sure you leave them in the comments below and let me know if you would like more paint recommendations like this on my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on our next design adventure.